Welcome to the Dream Architect channel. Today we will journey to the loneliest place on Earth, to the quiet epicenter of emptiness, known as Point Nemo. This is not a journey to an island or a continent, but an immersion into an idea. We will journey to a point on the map that is defined not by what is there, but by what is not. This is the pole of inaccessibility, the heart of a great aquatic desert, where the closest people to you are not on land, but high overhead, in the silence of space. This is the place where humanity sends its boldest dreams, its spaceships to die. We will listen to a silence that is thicker than water, and feel a loneliness as old as the ocean itself. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe, or share a thought below. This helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul after another. And now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy and your mind soften. Let us begin. There exists a place on our planet that was not discovered, but calculated, born not from the gaze of a traveler, but from the silence of a mathematical formula. This is Point Nemo, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, found not in the sea foam, but in the calm dance of numbers. Its existence was predicted and calculated only in 1992 by the Croatian-Canadian survey engineer Hrvoje Lukatela, who used a special geodesic program for this purpose. He did not stand on the deck of a ship, gazing at a new, uncharted horizon, but sat before a flickering screen, where an algorithm sifted through endless options, searching for the perfect center of the greatest aquatic desert. It was not a geographical discovery, but an intellectual one, a triumph of abstract logic over tangible space. Thus, an invisible coordinate appeared on the world map, drawn not with ink, but with pure reason. A silent point, pulsating in the very heart of the ocean, like a thought that has found its place. And this silent heart received a name, taken from the depths of another fictional abyss, from the world of timeless literature. Point Nemo is named after Captain Nemo, the enigmatic hero of Jules Verne's novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, a brilliant engineer and recluse. Translated from Latin, Nemo means no one, an ideal epigraph for a place defined by absence, for a point on the planet where there is no one. The name of the fictional misanthrope, who built his own world in the ocean depths aboard the Nautilus, became an eternal symbol of the real and most immense loneliness of our planet. Thus, fiction and reality intertwined, giving a name to a place where the world of men ends and the silence of the blue begins. A place that Captain Nemo himself would have considered an ideal refuge. This blue expanse outlines an invisible boundary, creating a perfect circle of emptiness on the surface of the Pacific Ocean. A circle with a diameter of almost 5,500 kilometers. Imagine that you are its center. The nearest land in any direction is more than 2,688 kilometers away. To the north is Juicy Atoll, an uninhabited coral island in the Pitcairn Islands group. To the northeast is Motu Nui, a rocky islet off the coast of the famous Easter Island, itself a symbol of isolation. And to the south, the icy Maher Island off the coast of Antarctica. 3 tiny points of land, themselves symbols of seclusion, serve as distant silent guardians of this great emptiness, like 3 ancient stones marking the boundaries of a sacred but forgotten place. The scale of this emptiness is so immense that it completely distorts our usual perception of proximity and distance. At certain moments of the day, the closest people to you are not fishermen or inhabitants of distant islands, but astronauts aboard the International Space Station. When the ISS flies over Point Nemo, It is at an altitude of only about 416 kilometers, moving at an unimaginable speed. This is 6.5 times closer than any inhabited land. In this brief, silent moment, you are closer to the stars than to your own species. Only a thin, precious layer of atmosphere separates your terrestrial solitude from the cold, absolute silence of space. And at this moment, the two great solitudes, oceanic and cosmic, almost touch each other. This silence of space is reflected in the water below, in its purest, almost lifeless form. Point Nemo is located in the very heart of the South Pacific Gyre, a gigantic system of rotating ocean currents. This colossal whirlpool, the size of a continent, acts as an insurmountable barrier, like a giant centrifuge. It repels nutrient-rich coastal waters, preventing them from reaching the center, and at the same time, prevents what has fallen under its power from escaping. Sunlight penetrates the crystal-clear water, but it has almost nothing to focus on. There is almost no phytoplankton here, no basis for a food chain. It is a biological desert, beautiful in its pristine, almost sterile purity, where the ocean seems to be sleeping. The reason for the existence of this giant whirlpool is the invisible but all-powerful Coriolis force. The Earth's rotation causes moving objects, including water and air, to deviate from a straight path, to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern. In the southern Pacific Ocean, this force twists the surface currents into a gigantic counterclockwise spiral, creating this great gyre. Point Nemo lies at its center, in the eye of the storm, where the waters are almost still and only lazily rotate. Thus, the rotation of our entire planet, its cosmic waltz, gives rise to the quietest and most motionless place on its surface. A place where the time of water almost stands still, and the ocean meditates deeply. Because of this near-total absence of life, the water here possesses an exceptional, almost unearthly transparency. If you could cast your gaze into the depths, you would see a blue that descends into the abyss, unclouded by anything but itself. This is the purest blue on the planet, a color born from the scattering of sunlight by the molecules of water itself, without the admixture of silt particles or microscopic algae. Physicists call this Rayleigh scattering, but here it becomes poetry. Light here dies slowly, gradually dissolving in the water column, until at a depth of several hundred meters, absolute eternal darkness sets in. This is the distilled color of loneliness, blue as the planet intended it, without the fuss and without the memory of the green of the land. And deep beneath this transparent blue lies the bottom, hidden under a 4,000-meter thick layer of water. This is a realm of eternal darkness and colossal, unimaginable pressure. If one could lower a steel ball to the bottom, it would be compressed with a force capable of crushing the sturdiest submarine. It is a world where not a single ray of sunlight has ever penetrated since the birth of the oceans. A world where the only event is the slow, almost imperceptible accumulation of marine snow. This snow is a continuous but extremely sparse rain of organic particles falling from the upper, more vibrant layers of the ocean. Each fragment falls for weeks before reaching the bottom, like dust settling in a long-abandoned house. And this sparse, slow snow is the only source of food for the few who dare to call this abyss their home. At the bottom, in the eternal cold and darkness, live only the hardiest life forms, champions of survival in extreme conditions. These are mainly bacteria, living in the bottom sediments, some species of polychaete worms, and holothurians, resembling sea cucumbers, slowly crawling through the silt. These creatures are adapted to extreme pressure, absolute cold, and an almost complete lack of food. They are the silent, invisible guardians of this place, existing in a world where one century follows another without a single visible event, in the rhythm of slow decay and eternal peace. Among these invisible inhabitants of the abyss are true originals, the so-called piezophiles, or pressure lovers. These are bacteria and archaea that not only survive under the colossal weight of the water, but also need it to live. Their cell membranes and proteins are structured in such a way that at normal atmospheric pressure, they simply cease to function and die. They are the true children of the deep, for whom our world is as deadly and alien an environment as the ocean floor is for us. They live in the press of eternity, and in this crushing embrace, they find their home, their only possible form of existence. Perhaps it is here at the bottom, in the cracks of the Earth's crust, that the most amazing secrets are hidden. Scientists speculate that in hypothetical hydrothermal vents, if they exist there, entire communities of chemosynthetic bacteria could exist. They create their own oases of life in complete darkness, feeding not on light, but on chemical substances coming from the Earth's interior, sulfur and methane. These ecosystems, completely independent of the sun, could have evolved in complete isolation for millions of years, giving rise to life forms unlike anything else on the planet. Point Nemo may hide not only emptiness, but also a completely different, alien life, slumbering in the warmth of the Earth's depths. It is because of this triple isolation, from land, from life, and from shipping lanes, that Point Nemo was chosen by humanity for one very specific and somber purpose. It has become a spacecraft cemetery. When the service life of a satellite, a cargo ship, or even an entire space station comes to an end, it must be safely deorbited. And there is no safer place on Earth than the point most distant from any land, from any person. It is the largest and quietest cemetery in the solar system, created by our own hands, a sad monument to our celestial ambitions and, at the same time, an act of supreme responsibility. The process of this space burial is a fiery ballet, visible only to the silent waters and the clear sky. The spacecraft, obeying the final command from Earth, fires its thrusters to brake and begins its final, irreversible descent. Entering the dense layers of the atmosphere at thousands of kilometers per hour, it turns into a fireball, a man-made shooting star. Most of the craft vaporizes, turning into plasma and ash, but the strongest and heaviest fragments of refractory metals continue their journey down, toward the dark and cold waters that await them below like the open arms of eternity. The final command sent from Earth is an act of farewell, filled with quiet sadness. Imagine an engineer in a mission control center, in the silence of a room lit only by screens. A single mouse click, a short sequence of code, is sent through the void of space to the silent giant in orbit. It is a command of no return, an epitaph transmitted in the language of radio waves. In this moment, a human becomes the arbiter of the fate of one of their species' most complex creations, sending it on its final journey, from the silence of space to the silence of the ocean. It is a quiet, personal moment of farewell to a machine that was a home, a laboratory, and a dream. At a depth of 4 kilometers, on the silty floor of Point Nemo, rests an entire history of space exploration. Here lie the remains of more than 260, and perhaps now 300 large spacecraft. These include Russian Progress cargo ships, European automated transfer vehicles, ATVs, and Japanese Kunatori vehicles. Each of these mangled fragments was once the pinnacle of engineering thought, carried the hopes and ambitions of entire nations, and now lies in eternal silence, slowly being covered by a layer of silt. This is an underwater museum of human achievements, accessible only to pressure and darkness, a silent archive of our striving skyward. Among these resting giants is the first European ATV cargo ship, named the Jules Verne. What an amazing irony of fate, what a beautiful, closed loop of history. A craft named after the writer who invented Captain Nemo found its final resting place at a point named after that very same captain. The fiction that inspired engineers returned to the reality it had predicted. The wreckage of the Jules Verne lies on the seabed next to the wreckage of the Mir station, and this is not just a scrap heap of metal, but a poem about how human dreams, literature, and technology are woven into a single, eternal pattern. The most famous resident of this underwater pantheon is the Russian orbital station Mir. In March 2001, this 135-ton giant completed its 15-year flight. Its controlled descent was a grand and sorrowful spectacle, watched by the entire world. A fiery rain of thousands of fragments stretched for hundreds of kilometers before plunging into the ocean. What was once a home for cosmonauts, a scientific laboratory, and a symbol of an entire space era, now lies on the seabed, having become the largest artificial reef in the most lifeless desert in the world, slowly surrendering its metal to eternity. In the future, this cemetery will also receive other titans whose time in orbit is numbered. The International Space Station, when its mission concludes around 2030, will most likely find its final resting place right here. This enormous complex the size of a football field, our current home in space, will make its final journey from the heavens to the seabed. It will fall to rest alongside its predecessors, the Mir station and the Progress spacecraft. Point Nemo waits patiently, ready to embrace the largest and most complex object ever created by humans in space, and to keep it secret forever, just as a great library preserves its most valuable folios. The soundscape of this place is one of almost absolute primordial silence. Far from shipping lanes, from whale songs, and the noise of coastal waves, a deep, dense silence reigns here. Sound travels very far in water, but here there is simply nothing for it to be born from. The only sounds are the low-frequency hum of the planet itself, the noise of distant storms refracted and weakened by thousands of kilometers of water, and the faint, almost imperceptible crackling of rare deep-sea creatures. It is the sound of emptiness, so profound that it can almost be felt, like a vibration in the bones, like the breath of a sleeping planet. It was in the vicinity of this region in 1997 that American hydrophones detected a mysterious and incredibly powerful sound known as the bloop. It was an extremely powerful, ultra-low frequency hum, surpassed in volume only by the noise from nuclear tests. Its source was not determined, which gave rise to numerous theories, from a giant sea monster sleeping on the seabed to underwater geological processes. The mystery of the bloop has forever shrouded Point Nemo in an aura of mystique, giving its void a voice, albeit a ghostly one, and causing humanity to believe for a moment that something huge and alive was lurking in the depths, something from the ocean's most ancient dreams. Later, scientists concluded that this mysterious voice belonged not to a living creature, but to ice. The most likely source of the bloop sound was so-called icequakes, the cracking and friction of giant Antarctic glaciers. The sound, born in the ice fields of Antarctica, travelled thousands of kilometres through underwater sound channels and was heard near Point Nemo, amplified by the unique properties of the water. Thus, the voice of dying ice, the groan of a glacier calving from the continent, became the voice of the loneliest place on Earth, adding a touch of planetary melancholy and grief to its silence. This ability of sound to travel for thousands of kilometers is explained by the existence of a special layer in the ocean known as the SOFAR channel, or the deep sound channel. At a certain depth, usually around a kilometer, the combination of temperature, pressure, and salinity creates a zone where the speed of sound is at its minimum. Sound that enters this channel becomes trapped. It reflects off the upper and lower layers and can propagate over vast distances with almost no loss. Point Nemo, thus, is paradoxically both the quietest place and at the same time a perfect resonator, capable of hearing a whisper from the other side of the ocean, like an ear pressed against the wall of the world. This channel is a kind of nervous system for the ocean, transmitting signals along its length. The songs of whales, the sounds of earthquakes, the hum of ships all travel through it. But Point Nemo is a zone of acoustic shadow, even for whales. Their migration routes and songs, which propagate for thousands of kilometers, bypass this great void. It is a silent spot on their sound map of the world. They sense this emptiness, this lack of life, and instinctively avoid it, leaving the silence untouched. Here, even the voices of the ocean giants fall silent, respecting this place's right to tranquility. The water that fills this area is some of the oldest on the planet. Due to extremely slow circulation, the water in the depths of the South Pacific Basin may not have contact with the atmosphere for 1,000 years or more. This is water that remembers a time before the great cathedrals of Europe or the pyramids of the Maya were built on land. It carries within it the chemical memory of an ancient climate, of long-gone eras, dissolved gases, and isotopes of the past. To immerse oneself in this water is to touch liquid eternity, an archive of planetary history that has yet to be read. Despite its emptiness and isolation, Point Nemo is not a static place. It is an important, albeit passive, part of the global ocean conveyor belt. This is a highly complex system of currents that regulates the entire planet's climate by transferring heat from the equator to the poles. The waters from here, though very slowly, eventually embark on a journey around the world, mixing with the waters of other oceans, carrying with them cold and depth. It is the quiet, lonely heart of the planet, which nevertheless participates in its common global breath, making it as steady and stable as the breathing of someone asleep. A journey to Point Nemo is not a tourist route, and it never will be. Even for the fastest modern ocean vessel, the trip there from the nearest port, for example, in New Zealand or Chile, would take more than 2 weeks of continuous sailing. It is a long voyage through the utterly monotonous landscapes of the open ocean, where the horizon does not change for days, and the sky and water merge into a single blue or grey canvas. This journey is not so much through space as it is inward, a confrontation with the idea of absolute isolation that not everyone can withstand. It is a pilgrimage to the center of silence. The seabed beneath Point Nemo is an abyssal plain, one of the flattest and most uniform landscapes on Earth. It is covered with a thin layer of reddish pelagic clay and the microscopic remains of organisms that have fallen here over millions of years, forming a soft, viscous ooze. The fallen debris of spacecraft disrupts this perfect monotony, creating bizarre man-made structures in a world where before there was nothing but ooze, rock, and eternal night. They lie there like monuments to another world, a world of light and speed, like the ruins of a civilization that fell from the sky. On this ancient clay, like forgotten treasures, polymetallic nodules may also lie. These are dark, rounded stones that grow with unimaginable slowness, adding only a few millimeters per million years. Layer by layer, they absorb metals dissolved in the seawater: manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel. Each such stone is a geological record of the ocean, a book written by time at such a speed that human history seems but a single short line within it. The wreckage of spacecraft falls onto the field of these eternal stones, and next to their slow growth, even the corrosion of metal seems like a rapid process. The metal from which spacecraft are made, titanium, aluminum, stainless steel, corrodes extremely slowly in the cold, oxygen-poor water at great depths. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of years will pass before these fragments completely dissolve and become part of the geology of the ocean floor. They are the most enduring monuments of our technological civilization, buried in the most inaccessible place on the planet. Preserved from time by the very depths, they will await their future archaeologist longer than the Egyptian pyramids will stand, becoming our most reliable envoys to the future. For the few deep-sea organisms that dwell here, this debris is a true gift from the heavens, a suddenly emerged oasis. On the hard, artificial surface of the metal, bacterial mats and rare species of sponges or sea anemones can settle, which could not anchor themselves on the soft, unstable silt. Thus, the spacecraft cemetery paradoxically becomes a cradle for new, albeit microscopic, ecosystems. Human technological waste unwittingly gives rise to life where there was almost none, becoming the foundation for a new, strange world that slowly blossoms in the eternal darkness. The water pressure at a depth of 4 kilometers is about 400 atmospheres, or 400 kilograms per square centimeter. This is equivalent to the weight of dozens of jumbo jets stacked on top of each other and pressing down on an area the size of a postage stamp. In such conditions, the laws of physics and chemistry familiar to us begin to behave differently. The water here becomes denser, and all processes of decay and decomposition slow down almost to a complete halt. This is a world frozen under its own weight, where time thickens and flows like cold honey, and reality obeys other deep-seated laws. If the ocean had a consciousness, Point Nemo would be its subconscious. It is a place where the fragments of our dreams of the stars are pushed away and forgotten, where suppressed memories of the sky are stored. It is a point of silence, where the planet can be alone with itself, far from the noise and bustle created by life on its surface. It is a place for meditation, created by nature itself, its own Zen garden, stretching over millions of square kilometers of water, where the stones are ships that have fallen from the sky, and the sand is time turned to clay. There is not a single buoy, not a single commemorative sign that marks Point Nemo. It can only be found using the Global Positioning System, GPS. You could sail right through it and not even notice, for it is invisible and intangible. Its existence is a triumph of our ability to measure and understand the world, but at the same time, a reminder that the most significant places can be completely invisible. They exist as a pure idea, as a coordinate in space imbued with meaning only in our minds, like poetry, written in numbers on a map. Since Point Nemo is so far from any continental landmasses, the air above it is some of the cleanest on Earth. It is virtually free of dust, pollen, or industrial pollutants. The night sky here must be incredibly clear, completely untouched by the light pollution of cities. The Milky Way here is visible not as a hazy band, but as a river of billions of individual stars, shimmering over water as black as pitch. It is a perfect observatory that will never have observers, an eternal theatre of stars above a perpetually empty hall. This clean air is a dream for climatologists. The absence of dust from the continents means that any particles in the atmosphere, aerosols, are of marine origin. These are salt crystals from sea spray, sulfates released by plankton. By studying the air above Point Nemo, scientists can understand what the Earth's atmosphere was like before the Industrial Revolution, before we began to fill it with smoke and soot. It is a window into our planet's past, into its pure primordial breath, preserved in the middle of the ocean. The name Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility is a bit misleading, as there are other poles of inaccessibility on land. For example, the Eurasian Pole of Inaccessibility in Xinjiang, China, is the point on land farthest from any ocean. But unlike it, Point Nemo is not just a geographical point. It is the center of a dynamic, living, albeit empty system. It is not just land, but a three-dimensional void, extending for kilometers in depth and possessing its own, albeit very slow, life and history. It is a void filled with water, time, and meaning. The fall of the Mir space station was such a significant event that some enterprising companies even sold official certificates, confirming that the buyer's name was recorded on a microchip that sank to the bottom at Point Nemo, along with the station. Thus, people found a way to symbolically touch this place, to leave their mark in the great emptiness without even coming near it. It was the purchase of a piece of oblivion, an opportunity to forever link one's name with the loneliest place on the planet, with an eternity that keeps secrets better than any archive. Imagine the final moment of a spacecraft's life. After decades of service in the cold, sterile void of space, it enters the atmosphere, embraced by fire. Plasma rips off its panels, antennas, solar arrays, turning them into sparks. It breaks apart, and each piece follows its own trajectory, like fiery tears. And then, a sharp impact with the water, a hiss, and a swift, inexorable plunge into darkness. Into a silence from which there is no return. It is a transition from a world of light and speed to a world of gloom and tranquility, from the world of humans to the world of the ocean. Point Nemo is not only the most remote place from land, but also one of the farthest from active shipping routes. Commercial vessels plot their courses to optimize fuel consumption and time, and these courses, called Great Circles, pass thousands of kilometers from here. The chance of encountering another vessel here is practically zero. It is a place where one can truly feel like the last person on the planet, lost in the infinity of water and sky, alone with oneself and the beating of one's own heart. The idea of such a place fascinated writers long before its official discovery. Howard Phillips Lovecraft, in his 1926 story, The Call of Cthulhu, placed the sunken city of Relaya at coordinates strikingly close to the actual location of Point Nemo. He intuitively sensed that if there were a place on Earth where an ancient cosmic evil could slumber, it must be right here, in the very heart of the oceanic void. Thus, literature predicted geography, and the fear of the unknown found its most fitting embodiment on the world map. Besides large debris, the fall of spacecraft leaves behind a trail of smaller fragments and chemical substances. Unburned fuel remnants, such as the highly toxic hydrazine, can create localized pollution zones for a short time. But the vast volume of the ocean, its colossal mass of water, quickly dilutes and neutralizes them. As if not noticing, the ocean here is a great assimilator, capable of absorbing and dissolving almost anything that falls into it, turning poison into nothing and debris into a part of its geology. Its indifference to our poisons is the highest form of forgiveness. Some scientists use Point Nemo as an ideal clean laboratory for studying Earth's background processes. Ultra-sensitive hydrophones placed here can pick up acoustic signals from earthquakes on the other side of the world, from underwater volcanic eruptions, from the movement of tectonic plates. It is the perfect place to listen to the whispers of the planet itself, unmuted by the anthropogenic noise of civilization. It is an ear pressed to the chest of the earth, to hear the beating of its stone heart and to feel its slow, deep breath. The waves at Point Nemo can reach enormous sizes, turning into so-called rogue waves or wandering waves. In the absence of islands and continents that could weaken them, winds blowing over thousands of kilometers of open water are capable of generating a gigantic swell. This is a place where one can see the ocean in its wildest, most primordial power. Waves here are born, live and die, meeting no obstacles on their path but themselves, in an endless dance of energy and water. It is a pure, untamed element, as it was before the appearance of land. This vast area of open water over which the wind blows is called fetch in oceanography. Point Nemo and its surrounding region have the largest fetch on the planet. This means that the wind can transfer its energy to the water over thousands of kilometers without interruption, creating colossal waves not found anywhere else. It is a perfect forge of storms, a place where water mountains are born, capable of crushing even the largest ship if it dares to venture here. Here, the ocean shows its true, boundless power. If you were to find yourself at Point Nemo during a rare moment of complete calm, you would see a perfect mirror. The water, as smooth as molten glass, would reflect the sky with such flawless clarity that the horizon line would disappear. You would find yourself suspended between two abysses, the celestial and the oceanic, in the center of a perfect sphere of blue and stars. It is an experience that erases the boundaries between up and down, between reality and its reflection, plunging consciousness into a state of weightlessness and pure contemplation, into the quiet ecstasy of non-existence. Point Nemo is an eternal reminder of the true scale of our planet. We are accustomed to thinking of the world as a network of cities, roads, and countries, as something developed and understood. But 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, and most of this water is a wild, uninhabited ocean. Point Nemo is the quintessence of this wilderness, a place that reminds us that we are merely guests on a planet that is, in its essence, a planet of ocean, not a planet of people. And this ocean merely tolerates our presence on its shores. On the seabed, among the wreckage of spacecraft, time flows differently, on a geological scale. The processes of rusting, which take years in the air, here stretch over centuries and millennia. Slow deep-sea currents gradually carry particles of silt, which settle on the metal surfaces, burying them under a shroud of oblivion. In tens of thousands of years, this debris will turn into strange geological anomalies, into metal-bearing strata in sedimentary rocks, into fossilized dreams of the sky awaiting their future discoverer. Perhaps future archaeologists or geologists studying these layers will be able to read in them the history of our space age. They will see the change in materials from the simple aluminum of the early Progress spacecraft to the complex composites and alloys of future interplanetary ships. The cemetery at Point Nemo is our unintentional time capsule, a chronicle of our ambitions left in the keeping of eternal darkness and colossal pressure. It is a message in a bottle, cast not into the ocean but onto its very bottom, in the hope that someone will one day read it. Point Nemo is not just a geographical curiosity, it is a philosophical concept. It is a place where humanity meets its own absence. We define it, give it a name, use it for our purposes, but we can never truly be there. Its essence is to be empty. Any presence of ours there would be but a temporary violation of its primordial nature, its profound, meaningful, and necessary emptiness for the planet. We can only contemplate it from afar, as one contemplates a work of art. The paradox of Point Nemo is that it is the most untouched, the purest place on the planet, and at the same time, our official dumping ground for the most advanced technologies. We preserve its purity from life in order to pollute it with the death of our machines. It is a strange, respectful desecration, an act of acknowledging that even our most complex trash needs the most secluded and sacred place for its final rest, a place where it will harm no one but the silence. This is our compromise with the planet, our payment for the dream of the stars. The water temperature at the bottom of Point Nemo is incredibly stable, hovering around 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. This is an eternal, piercing cold that slows down chemical reactions, slows down the metabolism of life, slows down time itself. The debris of spacecraft lies in this cold sarcophagus, preserved from decay almost as effectively as if they had remained in the icy void of space from whence they came. The ocean depths have become a second cosmos for them, just as cold, dark and eternal, only filled not with a vacuum, but with pressure. If you look at a satellite map of chlorophyll concentration in the world's oceans, the South Pacific Gyre, at the center of which lies Point Nemo, appears as a huge blue spot that fades into violet and black on the intensity scale. This is the color of an oceanic desert. Around it, closer to the continents, the ocean is colored in green and yellow tones, the colors of life. Point Nemo is the blue, cold heart of planetary loneliness, visible even from space, like a dark eye of the planet gazing into infinity. This absence of life also affects the global climate. Ocean plankton is a powerful biological pump that absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and carries it to the bottom after its death. But here, in this desert, the pump barely works. This part of the ocean makes a very small contribution to the absorption of greenhouse gases. This emptiness, this absence of life, has very real measurable consequences for the entire planet. Even nothingness has its weight and its influence in the complex system of Earth. Despite its incredible remoteness, Point Nemo is not immune to the global problems created by humanity. Microplastics, invisible to the eye, are carried by currents throughout the world's oceans and are undoubtedly present even here, in the purest water. These invisible ghosts of our civilization, particles of tires, clothing, and packaging, penetrate the most remote corners of the planet, a reminder that there are no truly untouched places left on Earth. Our civilization leaves its mark even where it is not present, like the finest invisible dust. Imagine the odyssey of one such plastic particle. Born somewhere on the outskirts of a metropolis, it is carried by rain into a river, then into the ocean. For decades, it is carried by currents, slowly breaking down into smaller and smaller fragments, but never disappearing. And then, half a century later, it enters the slow vortex of the South Pacific Gyre and begins its long gyration, only to one day, perhaps in 1,000 years, sink to the bottom and lie next to a fragment of a titanium alloy that came from space. Two eternal traces of our era meet in the eternal silence. Imagine the sound a spherical titanium fuel tank makes as it falls to the bottom. First, a dull thud against the water's surface, then a long fading hum as it sinks, resisting the increasing pressure. And finally, when the pressure exceeds the metal's strength limit, a dull, muffled pop, an implosion directed inward. This is the only sound that breaks the age-old silence, a brief moment of violence, after which eternal peace returns, and the mangled metal settles on the silt to fall silent forever. For the navigation systems of ships and aircraft, Point Nemo is an important reference point. It is a point to be flown around, a point one should avoid being near in case of an accident because help will not be coming from anywhere. It exists on maps not as a destination, but as a warning, as a symbol of danger and solitude. It is the place where the world of humans ends and something else begins. A vast, indifferent void that does not forgive mistakes and knows no compassion. It is the Here Be Dragons on modern world maps. From a psychological perspective, the very thought of Point Nemo can evoke both fear and a sense of peace. Fear of absolute isolation, of being so far from everything living and familiar. Fear of one's own insignificance. And at the same time, a deep sense of peace from the realization that on our noisy, overpopulated planet, there is still a place of absolute tranquility. A place where one could hear the beating of one's own heart and nothing more. It is a place where the soul can be alone with itself. Point Nemo is a metaphor for the end. The end of the journey for spacecraft, the end of the food chain, the end of shipping lanes, the end of human presence. But in every end, there is also a hidden beginning. The wreckage becomes a home for bacteria. The void becomes a canvas for our imagination. The silence becomes music for those who know how to listen to its deep low notes. The death of technology becomes the beginning of a new, slow geological life. It is not a period, but an ellipsis. In the distant future, when humanity may have left Earth and set off for other stars, Point Nemo will remain. The wreckage of our first spacecraft will lie on the seabed. As testaments to our technological childhood, our first clumsy steps beyond the cradle. And the ocean will keep this secret, cradling it in its cold, dark depths, as a mother keeps her child's first drawings, not understanding their meaning, but sensing their importance. It will be our silent memorial, left in the care of the planet. Every year, several tons of high-tech metal and composites sink to the bottom of Point Nemo. It is a slow but constant process. The ocean floor here is gradually being covered with a thin layer of technofossils. We are unconsciously creating a new geological layer that in the distant future will tell more about us than many of our cities, which will be erased from the face of the Earth by erosion and continental drift. Our celestial heritage will be preserved on the seabed, in the most secure of all treasure chests. Some of the falling fragments may carry residual radioactivity, for example, if there were radioisotope thermoelectric generators on board. However, space agencies make enormous efforts to ensure that such elements are enclosed in ultra-strong containers, capable of withstanding both the explosion upon impact and the colossal pressure on the seabed. Point Nemo is not a nuclear waste dump, but a carefully managed cold memorial, where safety is the highest priority and respect for the ocean, albeit of a peculiar kind, is still present. Point Nemo does not belong to any country. It is located in international waters, in the common heritage of mankind, according to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And ironically, we use this common heritage as a place to dispose of waste, albeit high-tech waste. This is a collective decision, made with the tacit consent of all spacefaring nations, an acknowledgement that our celestial ambitions have an earthly price, and it is the planet itself, its most secluded corner that cannot object, that has to pay it. Imagine a lone albatross flying over these waters on its powerful wings. To it, this is just another stretch of ocean, rich with wind. It knows nothing of coordinates, or the pole of inaccessibility, or the graveyard of ships 4 kilometers below it. It simply flies, obeying the wind and instinct, and its world is simple and whole. For nature, Point Nemo does not exist. It exists only in our consciousness, in our need to measure, name, and comprehend the world, superimposing our grid of concepts upon it. If one could drain the Pacific Ocean, Point Nemo would appear as the center of a vast, gently sloping basin. And at the bottom of this basin, scattered over hundreds of kilometers, would lie the mangled, rust and silt-covered remains of our most daring machines. It would be a landscape worthy of a surrealist painting by Salvador Dali, the wreckage of the future lying in the dust of the ancient seabed, under a sky that is no more. Silent witnesses to a civilization that looked to the stars, but fell to the bottom to become stone. Sometimes this place is called a satellite cemetery, but that is not entirely accurate. The vast majority of satellites are small enough to burn up completely in the atmosphere, leaving no trace. Point Nemo is a haven for giants, for space stations, large cargo ships, upper stages of heavy rockets. It is the final resting place of titans, not just space dust. It is Valhalla for machines, a hall of fame for the greatest and heaviest creations of our engineering thought, which ended their journey in fire and water. In 2018, the Chinese space station Tiangong-1 went out of control and began an uncontrolled descent. The whole world watched with bated breath to see where its debris would fall. Fortunately, most of it burned up, and the remnants fell in the southern part of the Pacific Ocean, not far from Point Nemo. This incident served as a stark reminder to everyone of the importance of having such a safety valve for our orbital ambitions, of the need to have a place where our mistakes can fall without causing harm, where the ocean can forgive our carelessness. Point Nemo is not only the most remote place from land, but also one of the most climatically stable. There are no drastic temperature changes here, no change of seasons in our usual understanding. The depths here live in a state of eternal, unchanging winter, while the surface is dominated by an eternal, mild autumn with constant winds. It is a world without cycles, a world frozen in a single, meditative state, where the only change is the slow movement of clouds and water, and the rare, fierce storms that disturb the peace. Perhaps one day we will send a special research vehicle to Point Nemo that will descend to the bottom and show us what this graveyard looks like. We will see twisted metal, covered in centuries-old silt. We will see how nature slowly but surely reclaims its own, turning our technologies into a part of itself. It will be a strange and melancholic sight, like a glimpse into our own technological past, at the ruins of our own, not yet finished civilization. It will be an underwater excursion to the Pompeii of our space age. Point Nemo is a place where two great abysses converge, the abyss of the ocean and the abyss of space. One accepts the remains of what was created to conquer the other. It is the point of their intersection, their quiet, silent dialogue. The ocean takes back the metal that was once extracted from the Earth's depths, passed through the fire of human thought, and rushed towards the stars, only to return to the Earth again. To its deepest and darkest womb, the cycle closes. And the planet reclaims its own, patiently and inexorably. The light from the fall of a large object, such as the Mir space station, was visible for hundreds of kilometers around. Fishermen from the Fiji Islands, located thousands of kilometers away, reported bright flashes on the horizon, resembling fireworks or a thunderstorm without thunder. It was the final salute, the last goodbye, from a giant returning home to the womb of the planet that gave it birth. It was a fiery trail left in the sky before it disappeared forever into the water, leaving behind only a legend and silence. Since the water at Point Nemo is so poor in life, it is also poor in dissolved oxygen at great depths. This anaerobic, or oxygen-free environment further slows down corrosion and biological decay. The metal debris here can be preserved in a recognizable form for geological epochs. They are the most durable artifacts our civilization will leave on this planet, more durable than the pyramids, more durable than all our cities. They are our message to eternity, written in the language of rust and oblivion. The idea of Point Nemo makes one ponder the concept of emptiness. We are used to fearing emptiness. We strive to fill it with sound, things, people. But Point Nemo is not a frightening emptiness, but a creative one. It provides space for silence, for safety, for the completion of a cycle. It is an emptiness that serves a purpose, an emptiness that is full of meaning and peace. It is proof that the absence of something can be as important as its presence, and that in nothingness, everything can be contained. If you were to dive into the water at Point Nemo, you would not feel anything special. The water would be salty, cool, just like anywhere else in the ocean. But the knowledge of where you are would change everything. Every breath of air, every heartbeat would resonate in your consciousness with deafening clarity. It would be not a physical, but an existential experience. An encounter with the absolute, with the scale of the planet, and with your own fragility amidst this infinity. You would feel like a thought in the ocean's consciousness. The very idea of calculating the pole of inaccessibility is a beautiful mathematical problem. It is the problem of finding the center of the largest empty circle on the surface of a sphere dotted with points of land. Point Nemo is an elegant solution to this geometric puzzle, embodied in the real world. It is a place where pure mathematics, abstract and cold, becomes a tangible physical reality, where a formula turns into geography and numbers into an abyss. It is poetry written in the language of geometry. Point Nemo is a kind of anti-island. An island is a piece of land completely surrounded by water. Point Nemo is a patch of water maximally surrounded by land, albeit at a vast, invisible distance. It is a negative, an imprint of land on the ocean's surface, its mirror image. It is a place defined by what it is not, by its distant surroundings, just as silence is defined by the absence of sound. Its being lies in its not being land. Oceanographers studying plastic pollution consider the South Pacific Gyre to be one of the largest garbage patches on the planet. It is less studied than the famous garbage patch in the North Pacific, but is likely no less vast. These gigantic mangled spheres and cylinders lie on the seafloor like mysterious sculptures, co-created by man and the laws of physics. It is an art gallery that no one will ever see, an exhibition open only to the eternal darkness and indifferent deep-sea creatures. It is art born from destruction. Point Nemo is an ideal symbol for meditation. Imagine that your mind is an ocean, and your thoughts are islands, ships, the sound of waves on the shore. Dive deeper, further from these thoughts, into your own inner pole of inaccessibility, to that place within you where primordial silence and peace reign, where you can simply be without thinking, judging, or remembering. Find your own Point Nemo, your center of silence, and let it lull your mind. The fall of a spacecraft into the ocean is an act of return. Metal, extracted from the Earth, returns to the Earth, which the seabed also is. The energy spent on its creation and launch dissipates into the atmosphere and water, returning to the planet's overall system. It is the closing of a cycle, albeit a very long and complex one. The ocean takes back what rightfully belongs to the planet, reclaiming what man has made and turning it back into a part of nature, into its own flesh. Being so far from land, Point Nemo is one of the places on Earth where the gravitational influence of the moon and the sun, which causes tides, manifests in its purest, most undistorted form. Here, one can observe the true oceanic pulse of the planet, uncomplicated by the geometry of coastlines and shallows. It is the breath of the ocean in its primordial rhythm, a slow, deep inhalation and exhalation that lasts for 12 hours and raises the entire water column by a meter, like the chest of a sleeping giant. The ocean surface at Point Nemo is not a perfectly flat plane. It follows the irregularities of Earth's gravitational field. Our planet is not a perfect sphere, and its gravity is not uniform. In this location, the geoid, the true shape of the global mean sea level, has a slight depression. Point Nemo is situated in a small gravitational dip. So, it is not only a pole of inaccessibility, but also a place where the very fabric of space-time sags slightly, creating a natural basin for silence and oblivion. Perhaps in the distant future, when technology allows us to travel easily through the ocean depths, Point Nemo will become a kind of tourist attraction. Submersibles will conduct tours to the remains of the Mir space station and the International Space Station, just as we visit the ruins of ancient civilizations or the sunken Titanic today. And people will gaze through thick glass at these rusting symbols of the past, pondering the transience of glory and the eternity of the ocean. Point Nemo is a place where geography ends and poetry begins. It is a point on the map that evokes more feelings and images than it provides knowledge. It speaks not of what we have discovered, but of the mysteries that still remain on the planet, of places that are greater than us, and that will exist long after we are gone. It is a reminder that not everything in the world must be useful, accessible, and understandable. Some beauty lies precisely in inaccessibility and in the mystery it holds. If a hypersensitive microphone were placed on the seabed at Point Nemo, it would record the quiet symphony of the depths. The low-frequency hum of tectonic plates, the rare clicks of deep-sea shrimp, the barely audible whisper of settling silt particles, and from time to time, the deafening roar and crash of metal falling from the heavens. It would be the music of oblivion and eternity, a lullaby the planet sings to itself in its most solitary corner, music that only silence can hear. For ocean currents, Point Nemo is a center of stagnation, an almost motionless point in a gigantic gyre. The water here can circulate in this slow dance for decades before breaking free and joining the global conveyor belt. It is like a quiet backwater on the vast, slow river that is the world ocean, a place for a long, deep pause where the water can rest before setting off on a new millennia-long journey across the planet. It is a point of stillness in perpetual motion. Paradoxically, the loneliest place on Earth is closely linked to space, to the idea of overcoming our planet's solitude. We reach for the stars to find kindred minds there, but the debris of our starships returns to the most terrestrial, most profound seclusion. It is an eternal dialogue between the aspiration upward and the return to the depths, between the sky and the abyss. Point Nemo is the place where these two infinities meet and silently gaze at one another, recognizing their own reflection in each other. Point Nemo is not just an emptiness, it is a calibrated emptiness. Its boundaries are verified with an accuracy down to the kilometer. It is a triumph of our desire to order the world, to give a name and a coordinate even to absence. We have mapped our own ignorance, outlined the borders of that which we do not know, and named this place Nobody. It is an act of a higher order, an attempt to subordinate to reason even that which lies beyond our direct experience and understanding. We have created a map for that which has no form. Imagine that you are a drop of water in Point Nemo. Your journey began hundreds of years ago somewhere in Antarctica, in a melting glacier. You were caught by the current and slowly, year after year, carried to the heart of the Pacific Ocean. You saw the change of eras reflected in the stars above you, but you touched nothing. And now you are here, in the quiet center of the world, waiting for the current to carry you away again on a new 1,000-year journey. Your life is eternity itself, embodied in motion, and your consciousness is dissolved in the ocean. Although Point Nemo is a biological desert, this does not mean it is completely sterile. Viruses and bacteria are present everywhere, even here. These are the most ancient and resilient forms of life on the planet, for which the concepts of desert or oasis have no meaning. They simply are, always and everywhere, awaiting their chance, their host, their nutrient medium. They are the invisible, dormant life that will outlive both metal and us, the eternal and silent witnesses to everything. Point Nemo is the physical embodiment of the concept of far away. When we say something is very far away, we can picture this place. It is the edge of the map, the point of no return, a place from which you cannot shout to be heard and cannot return. It is absolute distance that has become a specific geographical point, a measure of remoteness. It is the benchmark of loneliness against which all other forms of isolation can be compared, and they will all seem insignificant, like an echo compared to silence. The debris on the bottom is not just trash. They are artifacts that carry history. Each one bears the marks of its journey. Microscopic scratches from cosmic dust acquired in orbit, traces of melting from atmospheric entry, deep dents from the impact with the water. These are scars that tell the story of a celestial path and a fiery fall, a poem written on metal in the language of physics, which only pressure and time can read. These are the runes left by our civilization. Point Nemo is a place where one can truly feel the sphericity of the Earth. Standing in the center of a vast expanse of water, you see the horizon curve equally in all directions. You feel as if you're on top of a giant ball, not on a flat surface. This feeling is both uplifting and makes you feel your own insignificant solitude. You are a tiny point on a huge blue sphere floating in the blackness of space, and this realization bestows a strange, deep peace. The fall of a spacecraft is not just destruction, it is a transformation. A complex, ordered structure created by intelligence turns into a chaotic collection of fragments. Order becomes chaos. And then on the ocean floor, this chaos slowly, over millennia, transforms back into order, into part of a geological layer, into stone, into ore. This is the great cycle of matter, in which man has intervened for only a brief, audacious moment, only to ultimately submit to its eternal laws. Point Nemo is the perfect place to think about time, about the brief time of a human life and the even briefer time of technological progress, and about the long, almost infinite time of geological epochs, ocean currents, and the slow, inexorable decay of metal in the cold, eternal darkness. Here, at this point, our moments meet eternity, and this collision gives birth to a deep silent peace, washing away the fuss and leaving only what is most important. If the Earth had a soul, Point Nemo would be the place where it rests. Far from the noise of continents, from the hustle of cities, from wars and ambitions, from life itself. It is a point of planetary tranquility, a place where the Earth can simply be, undisturbed by anything. It is its sanctuary of silence, its meditation room, where it goes to be alone with itself, with its depths, and with the stars reflected in its dark waters. It is its dream. Imagine the very first fragment of the very first ship touching the bottom of Point Nemo. Before that moment, for millions of years, this seabed was untouched, covered only by silt and the rare remains of microorganisms. That first strike of metal on the soft bottom was the beginning of a new era for this place. An era when it became a mirror of our cosmic dreams and their final resting place. It was the first scar left by man in the heart of the void, the first line in the book of our underwater heritage. Point Nemo is not the end of the world. It is its quiet, invisible center, a necessary center that balances everything else. Just as the silence between notes makes music possible, so this great emptiness makes the existence of the rest of the living and noisy world possible. It is the pause that gives meaning to all sound, the shadow that emphasizes the brightness of light. It is the necessary nothing around which everything is built, the foundation of the planet's harmony. This point has no shadow, because there is nothing above it to cast one. But it is itself a shadow, the shadow of the continents cast upon the surface of the ocean. It is a negative space, defined by the presence of something else, far away. It exists because land exists, just as silence exists because of sound. It is proof that the world consists not only of things, but also of the space between them. And this space is no less important than the things themselves. Through the crystal-clear upper layers of water, the light of the stars penetrates deeper than anywhere else. On a moonless night, the ocean's surface does not simply reflect the stars, it seems filled with them. An illusion is created that you are sailing not on water, but through cosmos itself, and beneath you is the same starry abyss as above. This is a place where the sky and the ocean switch places, where one can lose the sense of up and down, and dissolve into infinity, becoming part of this double starry sky. The fall of a spacecraft creates a brief but powerful disturbance in the water column. The sound wave from the impact and implosion travels for hundreds of kilometers, informing the deep-sea inhabitants of an event whose meaning they will never understand. For them, it is just a sudden roar in their eternally silent world, a voice from the heavens that quickly fades, leaving only bewilderment and a tremor in the water. It is an invasion from another world, which is quickly absorbed by silence and oblivion. Although there is almost no life in the center of the gyre, its edges can be rich with it. On the border of this aquatic desert, cold, nutrient-rich currents rising from the depths meet warm, poor waters, creating zones of high productivity. But this life never peeks into the center, as if respecting its right to solitude. It exists on the periphery, framing the void with a green wreath of plankton, but not daring to disturb its peace. This is the boundary between life and meditation. The idea of a cemetery here also has another more subtle meaning. It is not just a place where dead machines lie. It is a place where the materials themselves die. Complex alloys created in vacuum and fire slowly break down here into the simplest oxides, returning to their original elemental state. This is alchemy in reverse, the transformation of the gold of our technology into simple geological lead, a return to the earth from which everything came. It is a great process of planetary humility. Point Nemo is also a pole of winds. Remote from land which slows and alters air currents, this area is a realm of pure, undistorted winds blowing over the ocean. Sailors know these latitudes as the roaring 40s and furious 50s. Point Nemo lies on their border, in a zone of perpetual air movement, where the wind meets no obstacles and can display all its primordial power, driving waves around the planet. This is the breath of the planet, turned into a hurricane. This movement of air creates unique acoustics on the surface. During a storm, there is no sound of surf crashing against rocks here. There is only the roar of the wind and the thunder of waves colliding with each other in the open ocean. This is the pure, distilled sound of a storm, as it was intended by nature, without the admixture of land. It is the sound of the ocean speaking to itself in its own ancient language, the language of power and chaos, and this conversation is not meant for human ears. At the bottom of Point Nemo, at a depth of 4 kilometers, there is no light, but there is its own glow. This is bioluminescence. Rare deep-sea creatures, predators and their prey, use chemical light to communicate, to hunt, to defend. These are cold, ghostly lights in the darkness, creating fleeting, living constellations in the eternal night of the abyssal plain. These little lights are the only thing that breaks the absolute darkness, born not of the sun, but of life itself, in its most desperate and beautiful form. This point on the map is the perfect place to bury not only spaceships, but also secrets. If one needed to hide something from the whole world, no better place could be found. The ocean here is the most reliable keeper of secrets. It accepts everything and gives back nothing, covering secrets with kilometers of water and millennia of silence. It is a perfect safe, created by nature itself, the key to which is lost forever in its own depths. Our journey to the pole of inaccessibility is coming to an end, although in reality, we never left a state of rest. We have touched upon the idea of a place defined by absence, and found in this emptiness a strange, profound fullness. The silence of Point Nemo is not a vacuum, but a space filled with anticipation, memory, and eternity. The wreckage of our boldest dreams rests there, in the depths, and the ocean guards them as its own secrets. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to leave a like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. And now, just breathe. Allow your eyes to grow heavy and let the quiet depths of Point Nemo lull your thoughts. Good night.